This is by Primo Levi, titled If This Is a Man. You who live safe in your warm houses, you who find returning in the evening, hot food and friendly faces, consider if this is the man who works in the mud, who does not know peace, who fights for a scrap of bread, who dies because of a yes or a no. Consider if this is a woman without hair and without name, with no more strength to remember, her eyes empty and her womb cold, like a frog in winter. Meditate that this came about. I commend these words to you. Carve them in your hearts, at home, in the streets, going to bed and rising. Repeat them to your children, or may your house fall apart, may an illness impede you, may your children turn their face from you. This was written because of his experiences at Auschwitz. He was a Holocaust survivor. When I deal with my politics, that line, who dies because of a yes or a no, always rings true. Politics is about decisions. These are not forces of nature that we have no control over. These are things we choose. When Governor Baker decided not to extend the moratorium on evictions, he said no to all the people who are facing evictions. He said that it's okay for them to then suffer, for some of them to die, as inevitably many homeless people do. When DeLeo had the chance to do an extension 2 weeks ago, and if you don't know who DeLeo is, he's the House Speaker in Massachusetts. He also said no. These are important. These are people's lives we're dealing with. This is personal to me. Like Brian said, I've been in construction for a long time. My dad was a general contractor. He still is. I've worked in homes my entire life, and as a kid, it always didn't make sense to me. I could go into the homes of millionaires, and I can go into the homes of the poor. And so the homeless, I never understood. Why don't you just hire people like my dad? Build more houses. As a child, these simple questions, just seem to pose themselves. As adults, we then justify it. Well, we don't want people to feel like they're guaranteed a home, because apparently, if we guarantee basic human rights, it'll make us lazy. These are the morals that we hear all day, every day. But these are choices we make. We let people suffer. So 11 years ago, during the Great Recession, my dad, like many others in the construction business, was looking for work. He got work weatherizing homes. Now, it may come as a surprise to many people, but homes are built with the idea that people will live in them. Why that's important is during the winter, especially around here when it gets cold, if you don't have people in them, if you don't have them heated, bad things will happen. Pipes will burst. Small damages will become large. So, I went with my dad. We would go into these homes. We would see pictures. We would see clothing. I can still remember the food rotting in the fridge as we had to clean it out. That line about coming home to friendly faces and warm food was burned into my mind. When you see pictures of people happy, and you're in their house, making sure that that pipes don't freeze, and you know that they will never see this as their home again, that has a traumatic effect on you. And of course, it has a traumatic effect on them. These people's lives were destroyed, again, because of a yes or a no. Because the president at the time decided to bail out bankers instead of the people. He told the bankers, yes, you can have your money, and the people, no. These are moral decisions. The houses didn't disappear when the people left them. The people could have still stayed in them. But that's a choice. That's a yes or a no. And it's even more personal. My aunt and my cousins had their home foreclosed on. Now it wasn't just me going into someone else's house, making sure it didn't get destroyed so that a bank can resell it later on. Now, my family had to move in. And if you ever have had family to have to move in, it's obviously something you should do, but the strain is unimaginable. When houses are meant for a certain amount of people and now you have to fit twice as many, when the normal stresses of financial issues now become something that you have to bear for someone else, that affects you. That can ruin family ties. Not saying it did for mine, but it's a common experience. These are choices that were made by people in power. These are choices that were made by people that we voted for. We obviously would probably choose not to have it, but it becomes our responsibility then for the people we elect to office to hold them to account. More on that later. So continuing this thread of how we choose to let people suffer. When I was in Boston a few years later, this was about 5 years ago, I worked as a concierge in downtown Boston, right next to the Boston Common. I worked right next to St. Francis House, which is a homeless shelter. I worked the overnight shift, and I can't tell you how many people, or how many homeless people, who are obviously people, I had to shoo away. And it's hard when you see someone that's just asking for a small delight, just a cigarette, just something so that they can put the suffering aside. And you have to be there and say, no, go. That's a choice. And it's a choice made even more harsh as you realize that there are empty apartments in that luxury apartment building, that you could put people into homes, that they do not have to suffer. That when I walked to the orange line, I did not have to see people in sleeping bags, fully covered as they're trying to stave off the 30-degree temperature. Those are choices we as a society make. As I'm sure you all know if you're here, the billionaires in our country have increased their wealth by $845 billion. That came out a little weird, but let me emphasize, $1 billion. Before the crisis, did you know how much money it would take to eliminate all homelessness in the United States? Anyone want to just yell out a number? No? 3 trillion? About 25 to 30 billion dollars. In the last 6 months, the billionaires in our country alone could have ended homelessness about 30 times over. In Massachusetts, we have 17 billionaires. Their wealth before the crisis was about 5 billion. Who knows how much it is now? Sorry, 50 billion. When you take the number of homes that could be covered if they just contributed 50%, still living lives of pure luxury, you could cover the people that will be evicted for years and years and years. These are the social choices we make and that we allow. Now, of course, there are people fighting against it, but they're seen as radical. They think housing as a human right is radical. They think it's okay to say yes to kicking people out of their houses. Those same people think it's okay to make sure that you're not guaranteed health care. They're okay with the insurance industry saying, yes, you can die. We want to maintain our profits. And just go down the list. All I want to say is that these are choices. They're not laws of nature. The laws of economics are not real. They're descriptions of behavior. And as descriptions of behavior, they are things that we can control and we can change. So like I said, we're going to get back to voting. Everyone should vote. Voting is important, but voting is the end of a long process. We have the primaries, which were also important, and you should have voted for that. But even before that, you should also be engaged. The powers that be, the rich people, they know it's in their self-interest. They see billions, they see millions of dollars are always on the line. And they will do and have done and will continue to do everything they can to maintain their positions of power. I don't necessarily see them as evil, but it is a system that cannot be maintained. We cannot allow $1 million houses to be constructed while we have people sleeping on the streets. This is a social choice. This is a yes or a no. So I'm asking everyone here, join an organization, become an active member of the community. We can change this, but we can only do this if we act together. Thank you.